Hello and welcome to Enchantment of Eternity's review for Star Wars Andor Season 1. If you have not seen all of Andor, this is your spoiler warning because this video will contain spoilers up to the very end of Season 1 of Star Wars Andor. So if you haven't seen the entire season, you should not watch this video until such a time that you have. So, yes, I gotta explain why I titled the video the way it did, because I know this is gonna rile some feathers, and I know sometimes people might accuse me of trying to create clickbait or just, I don't know, or stuff like that. But really, the reason why I decided to title the video Star Wars Andor is Overrated is so that you knew what you were getting into when you were watching this video. That you didn't want to, oh, here's another Andor review. This is another person who's going to sing its praises and talk about how amazing the show is. And then when you click the video, you'd be quite disappointed that it's not that. So it was more of I wanted to be open and upfront. And of course, the disclaimer, which I shouldn't have to say, but I feel like I do, it's just my opinion, obviously. It's just my opinion. It's just how I feel about it. This is what I'm talking about it. And I've also talked a bit about the perils of calling something overrated, because basically what you're saying is everyone else is wrong. Or the majority of people are wrong. Which is precarious, but I do feel that way because I'm not feeling the sort of love that everyone else seems to be showing for this show. Now, the one other thing I think I need to bring up is that this has not been a commercial success. So you might say, well, it's not overrated because it didn't do that well in the ratings. Sure, but what I'm more addressing, rather than the commercial success, which to me is absolutely zero metric on how good a show or movie is, how good it does financially, has no bearing on that whatsoever. I could name all these crappy movies that made tons of money and great movies that made hardly any money, so that doesn't really have anything to do with anything. What I'm talking about is my YouTube feed for the past couple months have been flooded with videos saying Andor's a masterpiece. This is how you do good writing. This is an essay about how amazing the writing is on Andor. Andor could be the best Star Wars ever since the first Star Wars movie. This is the best Star Wars, amazing Star Wars. Not just my YouTube feed, my Facebook feed, Google. Like, it's just bombarded by all these critics and fans who love this show, and people I know and personally who also are singing the show's praises and talking about how it's amazing. And in my humble opinion, it's okay. Like, I didn't hate it. I didn't think it sucked, but I certainly don't think it's like as amazing as everyone else is making it out to be. Now, do I think it's the best Star Wars show to come out this year? Well, it's definitely better than Obi-Wan Kenobi, and it's definitely better than Book of Boba Fett. Tales of the Jedi, well, it's hard to compare the two because that was just a series of shorts. I kind of like them equally, to be honest. I might like Tales of the Jedi a bit more, but it's a bit unfair to me to compare because, again, it's a series of shorts compared to this. Which is a 12-episode season. But regardless, yeah, sure, it's really good Star Wars show, but is it, like, amazing? Is it one of the best Star Wars properties ever? I don't think so. And again, this is just my humble opinion. Now, let me get to my main point on how I feel about Star Wars Andor, and that is, this season 1 was a 12-episode season, and I very strongly feel it should have been 5 episodes. Maybe 6. You might be able to stretch it out to 6. But 12 was too long. So yeah, I think it works best if I just quickly run down the episodes and how I reacted to them. I'm gonna give me a second to bring the episodes up. So episodes 1 and 2 were boring, so boring, filled with pointless flashbacks, and I really wanted to sleep to it. Episode 3, a bit less boring and started to get maybe a little bit more interesting. Episode 4 is when the show really kicked in. It got interesting. Episode 5 got even more interesting. And then episode 6 was amazing. I loved episode 6. I was blown away by episode 6. And then episode 7, the show got boring again. Boring again. Episode 8, still boring. I guess getting a little bit more interesting. Episode 9, still boring, but maybe a little bit more interesting. And then episode 10 was pretty good. Pretty decent episode. Didn't completely blow me away the way the episode 6 did, but still a pretty good episode. And in episode 11, we're boring again. But then episode 12, strong finish. Strong finale that pulled everything together. But honestly, as I was watching the finale, which I just finished watching a couple hours ago, most of the time while I was watching this finale, I was thinking, like, this is a pretty good episode, but did we really need all that build-up, all those earlier episodes to get to this point? And I kept answering that question with no, we did not. Now, I know the first thing, because I've already heard people preemptively say this, and so the first thing people are going to accuse me of is just being a big action fan. All I want is action up front, action. I want the freaking, Emperor coming back to life for no explicable reason and bringing like thousands of Star Destroyers to rain upon the rebellion. Which I hated that movie, by the way. Anyway, and they'll say, oh, this isn't for you. It's too much of a slow burn. It's just not your thing because you want something with a lot of intense action. Which, if you're familiar with my channel, if you know anything about my opinions on shows, is completely not the case. In fact, when the movies or shows have too much action in it, I think that's boring. I refuse to watch the Fast and Furious franchise, for example, because I don't want to see all that pointless action. It looks really stupid to me. So I'm not all about all action. Also, in terms of slow burns, if you've seen my reviews of Better Call Saul, which I would argue is an even slower show than this one, I loved it. It was one of my favorite shows of all time. And yet, as I said, it was slower than this one. It just did a better job at being slower. It did a better job of keeping me interested, of having little tidbits and character stories through, and not being so boring, even though it was slower. So slow does not equal boring. In my mind, I want to make that clear and head off some of these straw mans I think people might throw at me. But here's the thing, like Better Call Saul, it was a great character story. And I love character stories. In fact, that's what I look for most in anything. Any action, comedy, suspense, horror, what have you, the character stories. That's what I always gravitate towards. And if it has what I deem a really strong character story, that's what's going to make me love it, regardless of the genre, regardless of everything else that's going on. Now, did this show have strong character stories? Yes, it did. Did it have strong character stories in every single episode? Was every single episode contributing to said strong character stories like, say, Better Call Saul did? No, it was not. This season contained what, in my opinion, would be a lot of filler. In fact, there's a whole storyline which I think was unnecessary and I would call filler. And several storylines, as a matter of fact, that really did not need to be there. So yeah, I think this season should have been half the length, maybe even less than half the length. I think these first 3 episodes could have been condensed to the first 15-20 minutes of the first episode. And then you go straight into the heist thing, which is, to me, was the best part of the season, and the only part of the season that actually really worked for me, even though it was slow. Again, it was a slow burn in the heist thing. They had 2 episodes of build up to it, but I thought it worked. I liked it. They did a great job of developing these characters, getting me invested in what was going on. So I would do maybe 20 minutes of what the first 3 episodes did, go straight into the heist, and then skip the prison storyline. I'll talk more about that. That was completely unnecessary. Just basically episodes 7, 8, 9, 10, and 11 I would condense into one episode and then have the finale. So those are, so that would be, well, let's say the heist takes up 4 episodes because we've got to do the intro first. And then you have, the events that take place between episodes 7 and 11 condenses to 1 episode, so that's episode 5, and then the finale you can keep pretty much the same, episode 6. That's how I would do it. Now, you might say, but we wouldn't have that much attraction to Ferrix and the people there. And I think you would. I don't think we needed to spend nearly as much time as we did there. And part of how we could condense it is to get rid of all these unnecessary characters and focus on the main ones. And there's a lot of faceless characters in that Ferrix storyline that I still don't know who they are. I never cared about them. I thought they were completely pointless. So you write all those out, focus on, I think Bix was her name. And maybe in his mother, and that's it. Like, you could have her boyfriend betray her first, I guess. I mean, I suppose you could do the whole 1 episode for the intro. I'll change my mind on that, so you can flesh out Ferrix. Then you do 3 episodes for the heist. Then you do another episode to transition from the heist to the finale, and then the finale. I think that would have been a much better show. In fact, had they done it that way, I would also be singing the show's praises. I would be right there with everyone else saying that this is one of the best shows ever. Now, and that's a next point that I want to get to before I deconstruct the season further, is that I did like this show. As I mentioned, I'm not a hater. I didn't think this show sucked. There's a lot about it I really, really liked. There's a lot of good ideas. There's a lot of good character stories, and there's a lot of good beats. It's just overwhelmed by too much unnecessary minutia, in my opinion. So if you strip out all that in minutia, you would actually have a pretty amazing show. I would be right up there with everyone else if you got rid of all that minutia. But anyway, so let me get into certain elements. So as I mentioned, the first 2, the second episode, I actually stopped paying attention and started playing with my cats through most of the episode because it was so goddamn boring. You didn't need any of those flashbacks. Absolutely not. Positively not. There was some of the most useless flashbacks I've ever seen. As I said, you did need all those characters in Ferrix. And one thing I absolutely want to talk about with the 1 season is hold on, let me look up his name here. The character of the security guard / policeman who went to work for the Empire, Syril Karn. 86's storyline. Why am I wasting, every time we cut back to him, I'm like, why are we doing this? Like, what is the point? Why are you wasting my time? Like, this is one of the most useless, unnecessary characters I've ever seen in any show ever. Absolutely. And the whole thing, I would downplay, again, when I condense the 3 episodes into 1, I would completely downplay his role. Completely. He would be like a side character in that 1 episode and then gone. We never see him again. The whole thing with his mother is it was so pointless. It was, and every time he was like, alright, so let's examine his character story from a narrative structure. So he started out as this policeman who wanted to do right. He had a boss who was all worried about numbers and money and how good it looked to his superiors, but he wanted to do the right thing. And so he went out and tried to arrest Andor, and then caused this huge ruckus, blew up in his face, and his career got destroyed. But but he had like a uncle who was in a prestigious position to help him, so he got him a job. And then that other, God, what the hell is her name? Dedra Miru, the Imperial officer, like needed help from him, but then he became obsessed with her. And even though like he was in a good cushy position, had a better job, he still became obsessed with finding Andor and helping her for some reason. Some people suggested a romantic connection, but I didn't really see it. And at the end, he saves her life. So from a narrative structure, it's like, I don't know. So he, good position, gets in a better position, but lets his obsession get the better of him, and it leads him to this. I don't know, I guess it kind of works from a narrative structure point of view, but it really has nothing to do with this rest of the show. And now, maybe you could say it's building up to something in season 2, which I kind of hate that. But I don't really see how it could be, honestly. Like, I absolutely would have 86 this storyline entirely. Every time, I hated it. Now, Mon Mothma, her storyline was good. It was clever, but again, dragged on for way too long. Way too many unnecessary scenes. I would have seriously condensed it. Now, I did like how it portrayed, like... And again, the show overall did a really good job of showing just how precarious starting this rebellion would be, and how, like, it is to live under a totalitarian, authoritarian society, and just how dangerous it was for Mon Mothma to be living this double life. And we got the intricacies of that with her daughter and her husband, and her playing the political games and trying to hide the money and the financial side. Like, that was great. I did bring a nice flavor to the Star Wars universe, and I will agree with everyone else who loved the show on that one. But again, you could have done this even better. Sometimes less is more, is what I'm saying. And if you condense this and just had her, appear every once in a while throughout 6 episodes, it would have been even better, I think, personally. And then you had Dedra Miru, same. Like, it's similar. Actually, I really liked her storyline. She's probably one that it was interesting seeing the Empire side of things and portraying it as this dry bureaucracy. We had that, God, what was that dude's name? Pycelle? No, not Pycelle. Fuck, I can't remember. The dude from Game of Thrones. What was his character's name? I can't remember his character's name now. Guys, I guess it's been too long since I've seen Game of Thrones. But, the one dude, who was running the bureaucracy and was Dira's direct superior. Like, yeah, he was an interesting character. He seemed someone who belonged to a really dry bureaucracy who didn't really give a shit. And I like the portrayal of the Empire as that. It's more in line with a stereotypical authoritarian society. Qyburn, that's his fucking name from Game of Thrones. Qyburn. God damn it, took me forever to bring that up. Anyway, so all that stuff was good and I really liked it. But again, it could have been condensed. Sometimes I was quite bored with it. Sometimes I had scenes that were completely unnecessary, like a whole rivalry with that other Imperial officer guy. It was like, and by the way, when they revealed that one of those Imperial dudes was like the spy working for Luthen, I was like, who's that guy? But apparently we've seen him in the background, I guess. But I did barely notice him because the show has too many characters that they don't develop and that I don't care about. And yeah. And Luthen is similar. Like, he was really interesting when they first introduced him, but then they had too many scenes with him, like, in his antique shop that just dragged on for too long. And the scene where he, like, almost got caught by the Imperials and he had to, fight them and get away from them. Like, what did that add? Okay, so this will lead me Actually, no. First, let me talk about the heist. As I said, I love this. This is easily my favorite part of the show. I think all of the characters in this worked. I love how one of the guys there were all suspicious of Andor. Some of them died at the end of the heist, and the one guy betrayed them, tried to betray them and steal all their money. Like, that was a very sharp twist ending, and I like the character of Faye Marseille. That's the actress name. Val, I guess is her name. She was also Game of Thrones alumni. Played the waif. Anyway, I loved her character. And I wanted to see more of her, but they didn't really do it. She appeared after the heist in the later half of the season, but she really didn't do anything. She's just told to kill Andor, and you could tell that she was not cool with it. And that's about it. That's it. All of her appearances after the heist amounted to that. So, great character that they didn't really utilize for the rest of this unnecessary season is part of the reason why I would condense those 5 episodes into one. Yeah, and the whole way the heist was shot, with you had, I think they cut back to the village people celebrating a bit too much, because that didn't have anything to do with anything. It was just this cover that they were using, so I don't know why we kept cutting back in the middle. Maybe it's to be all artsy. I thought it was a bit pretentious, to be honest, but I still love the heist stuff. That was still easily my favorite part of the show. And the one dude, the kid who died, who had his manifesto, and how they brought that back in the finale, I thought was a really nice touch, and I do hope this is something that sticks with Andor, and that they bring up again in the future. And yeah, it was just really, really good. Like, I got, other than that villager thing, I really don't have any complaints about that storyline. But then we get into the prison storyline, which I think was filler. I think, and this is the main thing I was thinking when I was watching the finale. I'm like, because they never referenced it really, it didn't seem to have any bearing on anything whatsoever. It's like it never happened. So why did it happen? I don't know. So they could bring in Andy Serkis, so that they could bring in that one guy who apparently was in Rogue One, but I don't really remember that movie that well, so I didn't really care or notice until it was pointed out to me. So did they really need to do the sequel? And it seemed like really he was just a tourist, and he just happens to get arrested. Now I know that they're saying that his heist that he pulled off made the Empire like tighten their grip, and that was the direct response to him getting arrested. But really, I mean, I don't know. That's not enough for me. That's really flimsy narrative structure for me there. And bigger point is that, especially in shows like Star Trek, and there's other sci-fi shows as well, I get sick of the main characters getting captured or arrested and having to break out of prison cliche. Like, I've just seen that way too many times. Now, I do want to distinguish, because some people are saying, oh, this is such a good commentary on the prison system and everything. But I want to distinguish it from stuff like Shawshank Redemption or Oz, because those are like taking place specifically in a prison. Those are prison movies or prison shows. Whereas this isn't like that. This is more like your Star Trek or Stargate or other sci-fi, where you have the main character get arrested and go to prison, and you know he's gonna break out. You know it, because he's the fucking main character. And of course we know from that this is a prequel to Rogue One, so we know that he's not going to stay in prison the rest of his life. And you have a pretty good idea of, anything about, TV narrative structure and storytelling, that they're not going to keep him in the prison for too long, that he's going to break out. So that seemed kind of, I don't know, it didn't really, and in prison, like, he was, like, really upset and trying to urge people to break out of prison, but it seemed to be more about Andy Serkis, and then they just unceremoniously wrote his character off by saying, oh, I can't swim, which is a lazy cliche in and of itself, to be honest. And so, I'm sorry, but I would have 86 this whole prison storyline. I think it was so unnecessary, and for the most part, it was incredibly boring. It only got interesting when they broke out, when the inevitable breakout happened. And granted, I do like how they did that. I like the whole one way out and everyone screaming, realizing that there was their only chance of leaving, so they might as well die trying. So that was actually powerful, but I got a nitpick. I do have a nitpick. So they're saying that they seem to imply at first that when people get released from prison, they get sent right back to just put them in a different section so people won't recognize them. But then in the following episode, they kind of implied that they actually took them from other prisons. So they just exchange them from different prisons. So they're saying, oh, you're being released today. And instead they just take them straight to another prison. I got a question. How come none of the people who say they're getting released and end up in a different prison, why don't any of them tell anyone about this? Now granted, they say but yeah, because they say the whole thing with that one section everyone got killed was because they made a mistake and brought the same person back to the same section. It was like, oops. And so they could clearly see that he wasn't released. But if they didn't make a mistake, and if they do this regularly all the time and nobody actually gets released, then how come no one ever spoke up? Now, you could say, oh, they probably threatened to kill them. They probably say that, oh, if you tell anyone about this, we're gonna kill you. But they know they're going to spend the rest of their life in prison, as we saw in this one way out thing. So why wouldn't they just be like, well, fuck it, kill me. I'm going to let everyone know. And mind you, if they do this to everyone, we're talking about hundreds of maybe thousands of people being sent back. Not one of them would be like, let anyone else know. I find that really hard to believe. Now, I suppose you could get around this saying that they wiped their memories, but because this is a sci-fi show, but yeah, I don't know. I kind of don't buy this. To be fair, I don't know. As I said, I would have just 86 this entire prison storyline. I thought it was filler. I thought it was pointless, and other than the breakout, I thought for the most part it was boring. And every time they cut back to it, I'm like, yeah. And by the way, when they were making those things, and I heard some theories online that they were part of the Death Star, I was like, yeah, I don't really care. And so when you got this post-credit scene that showed, oh my god, they're part of the Death Star, I still don't care. Because it's not shocking, because people already figured that out. And in fact, some actors actually kind of hinted that in interviews. And so I kind of already knew it by the time they revealed it, and I didn't care in the first place. I certainly didn't care once they revealed, ooh, whoop-de-doo is part of the Death Star. How ironic. Anywho. Yeah, so yeah, the whole thing with Luthen and his spy net, people were talking about how that scene was amazing, and it was, first of all, as I said, some background character I didn't recognize, they did not establish him enough to earn this scene. I'm sorry. And Luthen, I don't, as I said, they spent way too time wasting time with him. I don't know. I mean, I am interested in him and his character. Now, the finale I did like, as I said, but it was a bit kind of cliche. How you kind of knew they were all going to rise up against the Empire, and you got to think that they pretty much all died. I don't know, maybe it's because I just watched Rebels, which honestly I think handled storylines like this better. To be honest, oh, this is the best Star Wars ever. I don't think so. I think Rebels did this better. But, yeah, but I did like the sort of, and again, we had characters like, what's-her-face, Faye Marseille's character, and her, little lover who just disappeared for a couple episodes, and they finally reunited, and they don't really acknowledge each other, and then they don't really do anything. They had all these characters, and that dude who, God, that I think I hate it and should have been written out of the show, that police dude, he, does it. He's all just standing around and serving no purpose. And now, yes, he saves what's-her-face's life at the end. Whoop-de-doo. I don't think it justifies its existence. And then yeah, they had the other characters in Luthen. They're all just standing around with no purpose. Now, Andor goes to Luthen at the end, and I did really love that scene a lot. So it did justify having Luthen there, but I think there were just too many characters there that didn't really need to be there. Yeah, I don't know. I like that droid. I think that droid's really cool. I actually kind of wish they did more with that droid, to be honest. But anyway, so I hear that they originally had a 5-year plan for this show, and when I heard that, I was like, oh my god! I like rolled my eyes. I was like, really, 5-year plan? But then I heard something that gave me hope. I heard that they're condensing all the next 4 years they had planned into one season, and then I thought, hey, maybe that season might actually be good. Maybe, and that they were talking about how they do 4 3-episode blocks, and they say each 3-episode block is going to cover 1 year. And I thought, hey, well, maybe this time there won't be so much goddamn filler, and it will move at a better pace. So maybe next season 2 of Andor I am going to think is amazing. I'll be right there with everyone else. But unfortunately, I'm not there with season 1. So my rating for season 1 of Star Wars Andor out of 10 is a 7. Very good. As I said, a 7 is a decent score. Like, if there was a show that everyone else hated and I was like, I give it a 7, people would be like, oh my god, why are you so big on that? But because the show everyone else loved and I give it a 7, they're like, oh, why do you hate it so much? Now, granted, you might argue that I spent most of this review talking about the flaws, but again, that's a natural reaction to everyone else being so huge and hyping this show up so much, that if it was a show everyone else hated, I would have spent the entire review talking about all the great things about it to try to counter all the other things. But in the end, I would give them both 7s and like them equally. And in fact, a 7 is a good rating. It's, because anything 6 or above is positive. So I'm positive on this show overall, despite my complaints. As I said, I thought it was better than Obi-Wan. I thought it was better than Book of Boba Fett, way better. And I thought it was maybe on par with Tales of the Jedi. It's again hard to compare the two. So I did really like this, and I like this better than a lot of other shows that I saw this year. Than a lot of other shows. As probably so far, I'm keeping track. I've watched like 23 shows, I believe, so far this year. And this is number 13. So it beat out a lot of shows. So I did like it. I did think it was good. I just think it wasn't as great as everyone else said it was. And it could have been better if they cut out all this unnecessary filler. In my humble opinion. So that is it for my review of Star Wars Andor Season 1. Thank you so much for watching this. If you did like this video, please be sure to leave a like. Check out my channel as I cover many other shows. Currently covering Star Trek The Original Series and Prodigy, but lots of other shows as well. So be sure to subscribe so you can keep up with all of that. And thanks a lot for watching.